I said, I got to tell this story. You know, it's election time. I'm going to get my notes out, and I'm going to tell you a story about election. Okay, the story is this. There's this politician who was running for office, and he decided to visit this reservation. And now I have to get these words right, because he's very poignant as he's saying what he's going to do for these Indians as he's running for this office. And so he's got a great crowd like this, and he's trying to get the Native American vote. Okay? So he says to them, he says, I promise you better education and opportunities for you all. And the crowd just went crazy. They kept saying, Yoa, Yoa. And the next thing he said, he was quite puzzled by that native word, but he was encouraged because they sounded very enthusiastic about what he was saying. He said, I promise gaming reforms to allow a casino on your reservation. And they said, Hoya, Hoya. Ooh, they were getting so excited. And he said, now they're really getting to a frenzy because he's promising them so much. And he says, I am really, really going to be helping you. And they said, Hoya, Hoya. After the speech, he was just quite excited talking to these natives about what he was going to do for them. So he was with the chairman or the chief of this reservation and said, well, he spotted some cattle over there, and he said, can I go over there and look at your cattle? And this is what the chief said, well, I would be careful, don't step on the Hoya. This is some politician. Now, just think about what's going on currently. You guys, think about it. We're getting a little Hoya. Aren't we? Okay, that was my story. I had to tell that story. I thought it goes along with election time.
I wanted to introduce you to Shama Sawant, running for city council, and she'll give us the other side. She's originally from India. Shama?
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you all for letting me have a few minutes to speak here. And as you know, we are brothers and sisters. I'm from the other Indian. I'm the other sort of Indian. But I also come from a people who are very familiar with what it means to be colonized and exploited. And we're seeing that same process continuing globally. And I wanted to bring the message from our campaign, not only because we're running this campaign in Seattle and it's important for us that people should know about it, but also because our campaign is running in that same spirit, that it's not just a parochial issue that we're dealing with in Seattle. It's poverty and inequality and racial segregation and income segregation is not an issue in Seattle only. It's happening all over the country and all over the world. And wherever we are able to raise our voices against that kind of process and try to reverse that, we should be doing that everywhere. And so we don't see that as simply a Seattle campaign. We see that as hopefully the message going across the land. In fact, I'm so excited to report to you that we've been, this campaign is starting to make waves everywhere in the world. We're being interviewed by people from all over the world. In fact, the gentleman there is originally from Germany, and he's, traveling all over the world, documenting social movements, and he's here to capture your event as well. And just now, I was talking via Skype to a group in Portland who are doing a house party fundraiser for our campaign in Seattle. And so this is very interesting. We are running a city council campaign, but we are having people outside Seattle help raise funds because they understand that every success that our campaign can have has huge implications for the left in general and for people in general, people like ourselves who in our own ways are trying to build community support against oppression of different kinds. So just to let you know a little bit about our campaign, we're calling for a $15 an hour minimum wage citywide. We're also calling for affordable housing and rent control. And we're calling for a tax on those who make $1 million, over $1 million every year, in order to raise revenues to fund for mass transit and education. And especially with mass transit in Seattle, we're seeing a 17% cut in metro. And most of the communities that need metro the most not only need it to exist but to be expanded are communities that are ignored by the city government, communities in the south that get very little attention, who's really talking about us. And I think that's the most important success that this campaign has already achieved, even before the electoral outcomes, that we have completely shifted the conversation. Last year, we were calling for $15 an hour when we ran a campaign for State House, and people said, oh, these crazy socialists. And now everybody's talking about $15 an hour. The mayoral candidates are talking about $15 an hour. They don't credit it, but it's okay. We don't want the credit. We want $15 an hour. It's okay if they want to take the credit, but let's fight for $15 an hour. And honestly, if we want to win any of these demands, it is not going to come from any of these, corporate politicians. They will pay lip service to it, but if you really want to push them into action, then we need mass movements. We need the community to get involved. And I'll conclude on this note. People often ask me, are you going to turn out to be like every other corrupt politician? Are you going to actually include the community once you're in city council? And my response to that is, I don't think of it that way. I don't see it as some sort of magnanimous thing I will do as a city council member. Oh, I will still listen to you. For us, we need the community to be involved because that's the kind of politics we are bringing to the table, where our politics is grassroots politics. It's not, the message of this campaign is not elect a messiah and everything will be okay. The message of the campaign is, if you want change, then we have to do it together. The only way change has ever come about is through grassroots efforts, and every single movement in the past proves that. And so I hope that you will join us, help us to win the election, but regardless of the electoral outcome, we have to work on these things together. And I would love to hear from you about specific needs about Native American communities. I don't claim to be an expert on that, but I would really like to know, and I can tell you a little bit about India, and maybe we can have a conversation. But I'll leave you there. Thank you.
This is Glenn Evans, or do you like to call?
J. Glenn Evans.
Oh, Jay?
Glenn Evans.
Oh, okay. You want to say a few words?
All right.
Okay, great.
Incidentally, I think our candidate forgot. I talked to her about the idea of if she gets in, why not make a resolution that Seattle itself recognized the Duwamish tribe, even if the federals haven't. So I'm saying it for her. Columbus Day, everyone celebrates it, but until I read a book that said the real history, I don't know why we're celebrating Columbus Day. So First Nations Day is what we should do, and we have some good readers and poets that have stories to tell, so I turn it over to you.
Thank you for your wonderful comments. Our first honored entertainer is Peter Ali, and so if you're ready, if you're not, are you ready?
Hi, everybody. Who's never heard me before? See some hands. Never heard me play. Oh, look at you, all of you. Well, anyways, it's always nice to be down here. I've been here before playing with my good friend and brother, Paul Wagner, I think he's still in Japan. And so, and I play all over the place like he does, except Japan. I live up in Whatcom County and Skagit sometimes, it just depends. And so I'm glad to be down here today. So if you're curious about my heritage, for the lack of better words, because I did say all nations, I'm Yaqui Indian. The Yaquis are from Mexico, and there's a tribe of them in Arizona. I am not enrolled because I can't prove who I am, which is okay. I'm also Italian and Spanish. My great-grandfather immigrated from Italy to Mexico, and there's a good story about it. And so my father is from Morocco. And I found out some years ago that my father shared with me that we were not Arabic, that we were Berber. The Berbers are the indigenous people of North Africa, just like the people here that are indigenous. So I'm indigenous on both sides. However, the Berbers are really called Amazic or Amazea, because Berber is a derogatory term that was given to them in the ancient times, Berber meaning barbarian. We are not barbarians. And so, but we have a carpet named after us. So I was given my name Peter Ali, or Peter, from my grandmother, not by blood. She was German. And there's a whole good story on that too, but I don't have time because Jay Glenn says I have 10 minutes, and I could easily talk that away. So, 15 to 20. Woo! All right, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to play some flute songs for you. I don't read music. I'm self-taught. I play from my heart. So. Thank you. I was having a little trouble with it. It was kind of fluting out, as they say. This is a woodland-style flute, and I want to share who made this for me. His name is Lowell Newland. Lowell Newland's a good friend of mine. He moved to Florida, and I lost track of him, but he was a Vietnam veteran, and he made his first flute from a gun barrel. He was a door gunner on a Huey during Vietnam, and apparently when the gun barrel gets hot, it's no good, it warps, and he was able to make his first flute that way. Now, he doesn't make flutes like that anymore, but he made this one for me. So my song honors him and any veterans in the audience. And Lowell is Cherokee and Choctaw, and being from where he came from, these are the people of the southeast part of the United States, Iroquois as well. So just a little story behind this flute. This next flute is a Lakota style flute. It's Plains flute. It's in the key of A for any of you music people out there. I don't read music. I don't know one note from another. And people ask me, do you know what key you're playing in? I go, let me look. It's underneath the flute written on there. So, cue. Well, my journey began about 14 years ago picking this instrument up, if you're wondering what drove me to play this. People play this instrument for many reasons, whether it's part of their ancestry or they want the challenge of learning a new instrument, because a lot of people play this instrument. You don't have to be Native American to play it. For mine was twofold. I was wanting to get in touch with my roots, and also I was going through a really nasty divorce. And so, and I tell this same story wherever I go because it's true. Sometimes when people go through something that's really tough in their lives, people self-destruct and abuse drugs, alcohol, whatever. And I think I had enough common sense not to do that, but it was on a sunny day in Paulsbo where I was living at the time that I heard flute music. And it was an art show, and I was separated from my wife at the time and my kid. And so I kind of went close to where the music was coming from at this art show, and it was Matt and Tom Stewart from Stellar Flutes. And playing their flutes was their friend, who's also my friend, Charles Littleleaf. Charles is from the Warm Springs Reservation, and him and his fiery Italian wife, Vicky, were there. And they make flutes, and they're good people. And so he gave me some words of wisdom. A month later, I went to the Stewart's house in Shelton, and I got my first flute. And I took it with me everywhere I went, and I taught myself how to play. So I think that was an interesting time of my life. I got through all that and beyond, and got to play with some really good friends of mine. A couple of them you might know, Gene Tagaban and Swolkanum. And so 4 years ago, we got to play for the Dalai Lama when he was in town during the Seeds of Compassion tour. And that was a really big deal for me. So much so that I called my siblings, they're all in California, my mom, and I go, hey, guess what? I got to play for the Dalai Lama. And their response was, oh, that's nice, And so, I don't know, they kind of didn't get it. But I'm the only one in my family that's kind of involved with cultural, things that are part of our ancestry. And they're off doing their own thing, which is okay, too, so I suppose. But another thing about it, also about this healing instrument, is I had cancer 4 years ago. And so I was able to play my flutes while I was undergoing chemotherapy. And they allowed me to do that, which was a big deal. It was really helpful. So if you need something that'll help you, if your heart is broken or you know somebody that's ill, this is a good thing. This is good medicine. And this is also the poor man's yoga right here. So I can't afford yoga. So this works for me. So. Thank you. How much time do I have? Do I have a little more time? Okay. Well, then I should have pulled out more flutes. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to play one more song. I have another flute up here. I should have grabbed more flutes. And I'm also going to have a friend play drum with me on one of the songs I have left to play. So. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was trying to replicate the sound of an eagle and the little chirpy noises that they make when they're in the trees talking to each other. The flutes were also originally, for the Plains people, were courting flutes. They were called love flutes, and this is how the men courted the women in the tribes, like serenading, which you can still do today, guys. And so, but now everybody, it's a shared thing, and everybody plays the instrument. They're kind of like recorders. But they're also to replicate the sounds of nature. One time I was playing with a friend, his name is Jay Bowen, he's Upper Skagit, and he is an artist in Leconer. And it was a nice sunny day, and we were out in the area near his art gallery, and we were just playing, just for fun. And everybody, it's because Leconer's kind of a touristy town, you know, so everybody was kind of looking up in the sky, and we were looking up, and there was a couple of eagles soaring above us, just circling us. And as we continued to play, they stayed. And as soon as we were done, and then they left and went on their way. So it was kind of a blessing. So now, if you give me a minute, I'm going to grab a couple more flutes. So give me a minute here.
This is from Vi Hilbert. She wrote this. And I think it's appropriate. Sometimes we forget about what our elders said. And Vi Hilbert is the one that brought back the Lushootseed language. And this is what she said. Respect holds sacred all of the earth. Respect holds sacred all the spirits. Remember, hold sacred the Creator. Be honest. Don't you dare lie. That's so Vi, because that's the way she talked. Be generous, be helpful to the people in any way you can. Be compassionate, feel forgiveness for others. Be clean, you will be washed. Keep washing away all badness, dirt and sin and crime. Be industrious, and you will always work, always. Don't be lazy. And this was Vi. And I came across, I have a lot of papers. I'm trying to write my book, but I just seems to have other things that come before what I'm trying to do. And I said, I need to share that the next time I have a chance, I want to share what Vi had shared with me. And it's so honest and upfront the way she was to everybody that she cared about. And if she didn't like something, she let you know. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, Peter. You ready? Okay.
Yachts. We means holler, lots means holler. That's how you say, hello and the shoots. Why is you talking about that? So we also say, well, I do my daha when I'm addressing the group. Daha chaps the arm, shop is up. The arm is cheek, high cheek, shop. Daha chaps the arm. And I'm dressed like this because I just came from a service, funeral service for one of our friends on canoe journey. And so came straight here today. And so we did the hot shots, chop, dotty, CI, Travis, Eva, Shasta, Shaka. Great creator watch over Travis on his journey every week. So my name is Ken Worth. And should I say that? I'm on council member of the Duwamish tribe and great grandson of that guy named Wall GCI. So we would is how we would say welcome friends, welcome honored, welcome back. We would all day, I'll put it to ha ha boots. Welcome to this house. Long ago it's called ha. I didn't know this was going to be formal. So, wigwu hadak, wigwu hadak, wigwu hadak. Welcome to the Longhouse, my friends, my honored ones, my family. Al turi tuhak, a long time ago. Te all, this house. Da, name, hahapus, mighty ant. Wigwu hadak, disiyaya. Peter. Thank you.
So I found a couple of flutes that we can work with. They're both in the same key because I'm not musical in that way. And so, and plus it doesn't have my cooties on it. So I'm getting over a cold, so don't come kissing me after the event. So anyhow, yeah. So, yeah, that's good. Make it a little louder.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Here. Oh my gosh. All right, our next guest, and I would like him to talk about a little bit himself, but I'd like to ask Thomas Hubbard to come up and share with us. Well, welcome. I don't think we've met, but you're awful tall. Welcome.
Glad to meet you. Sure. Well, my name's Thomas, and Thomas Hubbard, and I realize that it's custom to introduce yourself and your lineage. And I've got a friend up on Tulalip who can name both sides of his family clear way back past English into Lushootseed names. I can't do that. Mine goes to my grandparents, and nobody knows, and there's no way to find out, and there's no way to be documented. As far as I can understand, I've got some Miami blood and some Cherokee blood and some Irish blood, and the rest of it's just blood, I guess. But anyhow, I understand also that the tribe here has been having a lot of trouble getting recognition. In fact, they've been having a lot of trouble ever since the invasion began. Lots of us have. So, if I can stay on mic for a minute. I want to read a couple pieces. The first piece I'd like to read for you is a piece that has been published in Yellow Medicine Review. And if you're not familiar with the publication, boy, this is uneven. If you're not familiar with the publication, how's that? Is that better? If you're not familiar with Yellow Medicine Review, it's a literary magazine, and if you're Indian, or Native American, or Indian, or Injun, or black, or some other color, you got no special chance really, but you've got just as much chance to getting published here as anybody else. Of course, they gotta like it. Anyhow, I've been living for a few years back in a place not too far from some of my heritage. And back in the Ozarks, the people walked through there on their way to Oklahoma a long time ago. And in the first year that I was back there, I wrote this piece, and it's entitled Ozark Winter Sky. Blue beyond blue there to the north. On days like this, when Father's Son comes among us smiling like he does, no other color can match it. Passing through here long ago, afoot, driven from their home by hairy-faced soldiers. Did our cousins occasionally see this same blue sky, I wonder? Did it grant them a bit of comfort? This morning, hours before dawn, stars danced on my black coffee, reflections from a sky of the same pure, wise, all-accepting black. Standing on my porch in a chill night, coffee cooling on the rail, I offered my cedar flute once, twice, 3 times, and once more, and it sang memories, recalled stories. Voices from forgotten campfires talked of blue sky days long past, whispering again of the harmony with our bruised, scarred Mother Earth. And since we're in apparently a bit of a celebration, I've got this piece that addresses Columbus Day, and this is called, Hey Columbus! Hey Columbus, you step out of your sport vehicle, your sport utility vehicle, you step out of it and begin fueling on pump number 3 while I finish up on pump number 4. You eye my braid, my old car, my flute bag in the rear window, and that expression comes onto your pale, clean-shaven face. You seem upset that I don't shuffle and step aside, show embarrassment about my dark skin. And why in hell must I have feathers hanging on everything? You are Columbus, with your arrogance and your privilege and your superior equipment. You are that same murdering foreigner. And you wish I would go away and not be present right here with road dirt on my car. Hey, Columbus, nobody needs you here. We lived here for tens of thousands of years before you came with your virulent diseases. Hey, Columbus, your arrogance wears thin, and a cheap, pitiful little thief shows through. Your time has already been long enough. And you are that same Columbus who accepted my Arawak cousin's hospitality there on Hispaniola, and then gathered folks up to sell as slaves in Europe. You're that same Columbus who noticed people wearing gold ornaments, who demanded tribute, who cut off hands and feet because they didn't bring enough. You're that same Columbus whose own Spanish priest, Fray Bartolomé de las Casas, wrote about your unimaginable cruelty. You might say that was long ago, that I am only showing ignorance and paranoia. But you had nothing to do with it. You might be lying too. Your arrogance gives you away, Columbus. It shows you out. You are that same Columbus who thought himself better. Hey, Columbus, haven't you stolen enough? Aren't you rich enough to get into that exclusive little heaven that you talk about? Columbus, hey, if my honest half-breed presence causes you discomfort, if you'd rather your wife and kids didn't see me, why not leave? You are that same Columbus. Yes, it's you. Stepping from your sport utility vehicle onto the flat pavement of a filling station. You're that same Columbus, and you can't hide. Even in the privacy of afternoon drinks at your exclusive clubs, that same arrogant stink surrounds you. You're that same old Columbus who dreams of empire, who pretends to own this land, who is willing to kill for profit. You're that same Columbus who brought us cheap thrills, oil spills, insurance bills, close order drills, targeted kills, landfills with radioactive waste. You're that same old Columbus, and you wish I would go away. After all these years, after your people have done these things. Hey, Columbus, why don't you go away? Hey, Columbus, your scorn displeases me. Hey, Columbus, your elections are phony. Columbus, your time's about up, isn't it? Hey, Columbus, haven't you made enough of a mess? Hey, Columbus, gather up your trash and carry it away, please. Hey, Columbus, go on back where you came from. Hey, Columbus, John Wayne has plastic teeth. Columbus, last call. Hey, Columbus, keep moving. No stopping here. Move right along. Hey, Columbus, who's up in there? Whoa, sweet pig. Happy Columbus Day. I'd like to read a couple of pieces. I think I've got time out of this book. One addresses my situation, or my situation back when I still cared. And it's in Engines. They got some out at the desk. And my apologies to William Shakespeare. This is called To Be or Not to Be. To be an American Indian, you must trace ancestors clear back to the roots, the authorities tell me. You must produce the papers, official papers, birth records, government records, records, that is, of the invader's government. Records of that same government which forced natives off their land, crushed tribes, ruined habitat, spread disease and pollutions, tore apart families, broke treaties, and wrote it all down in that crooked history they teach in high school. They say I need records from that same government which captured families halfway around the world and brought them here, no matter how many were lost at sea, and enslaved them, sometimes worked them to death, sold off their mates and children, and then bragged about this country was made on our hard work. They suggest, if I want to be a legitimate Indian, that I seek out church records, records of that religion which set out to destroy American Indian culture and customarily beat American Indian children for speaking their own language. In those schools, they were making native kids into God-fearing Christians. They say that for me to be a legitimate American Indian, I must dig up my roots for government inspection to show that my ancestors surrendered to the invaders and obeyed the invaders' new laws, reporting weddings and births to those same racist invaders who pretended piety and looked upon American Indians as less than human. The trouble is, my friends, the invaders' government and all its records have nothing to do with my roots. My roots live in the earth in the past, and I had rather stay renegade than dig up my roots. We got one more time for one more. Don't see many young people in here today. I'll read this little adventure I had. Let's see, it's in this book, I believe, Engines. And it's on page 10. That's the very next page. What do you know? This piece is about a little adventure I had up on Orcas Island, I believe it was. Or maybe it was up in the town of Friday Island, somewhere up in there when I used to live on a boat. I landed my boat and went into the town, and this is what happened. It's called Closure. Native American Gallery, the sign promises outside this uptown-looking store, and inside, touristy browsers check out baskets, point out masks to one another, try on the silver jewelry, exchange pleasantries with the sales ladies, while some kind of new age music tinkles from the loudspeakers. heavy industrial notice, heavy industrial noise of closure. Notice the heavy industrial noise of closure. A room full of sphincters slam shut in response to my intrusion at the front door, and suddenly all pretend to focus on the nearest art object. Everyone, that is, except the svelte sales lady, who watches and watches, unblinking, lest some valuable trinket might leap into my knapsack. Finding no rich young women to kidnap, drag away to my teepee, no fair-faced children to carry off, not even any horses to capture in there. It seems all a waste of time except for some amusement at the conversations resuming upon my empty-handed exit, when through the closing door wafts the sales ladies behind her hand whisper, "Given half a chance, they'll steal you blind." Yeah, sure, they already have, ain't it? Thank you.
That was wonderful. You have to come again and share. Oh, yeah. Our next guest is Philip Red Weagle. Oh. Come on up here and share with us.
Well, I'm more of a fiction writer than a poet, and my last reading I read poetry, and this time I just happened to be writing a book about a time traveler. This is a Native American time traveler I wanted to fit in, and this is the 5th chapter that I'm going to read to you. I'm going to read a short version of it, and so I can explain a little bit. And he has decided to go back and meet Christopher Columbus and see what all the fuss is about. And can you hear me? Okay. So anyway, he is, for 2 pages, he has made the journey back, and he's kind of inculcated himself into the Arawak people, the Taino. And so I just took off 2 pages and so I could have time to read this. I haven't haven't read in a while. My father is Dakota. He's assisted in Wapitan and Metamokaton. And he just died on September 29th. And I just came back last night from driving to Montana, and we buried him out there at Fort Peck, and so I'm kind of spotty today. And my mother is Mary Ann Stillicum. She died in 2003. She was 81 when she died. My dad was 96, going on 97. My mother's father is John Stillicum, and her mother is Agatha Fulton from Little Boston. So I'm from here. I have a lot of relatives around here. The canoes of these people, who called themselves Taino, lined the beaches. The canoas were very large and made of mahogany. Very impressive, he thought. Pretty much every morning, the canoes would be gone before sunrise and would return before midday. The fishing was good here. The sea provided much wealth. Other food items were grown in little mountain gardens. This is where the yucca came from, and the peppers and the potatoes, guava, corn, beans, yams, tobacco. The hurricane season was just ending. The weather was hot and humid. The sky was often gray, and you could see lightning at night flashing in all directions around the cay. The Taino, an Arawak word for the good people, understood the weather patterns here and were quite aware that it was a banner season for fishing and for the gathering of the bounty. The old ones came down to the canoes every morning to offer prayer and thank the sea spirits and send the men out to gather. During the day, these same elders would teach the children through story. He would sit in some of these sessions, and he could tell that it was very much like the storytelling of his own elders when he was a child. There was lots of laughter, marked with smatterings of serious listening, the children rapt and waiting for the next word to spill out from the elder's mouth. The elders' faces would contort into various shapes and express various moods as needed for each telling. There were angry spirits and good spirits and happy spirits showing on the faces of these old men. The women would sit not far away, weaving baskets and preparing the catch of the day as they sat alongside little fires in the sand. They too would laugh at the stories as they unfolded, perhaps remembering these teachings from their own childhood. These were a healthy people. All were beautiful. There were no fat ones here. Everyone was lean and in good shape. They still had their own teeth and smiled often. All provided for the welfare of the village. Everyone had a place. Some of the men had many scars upon their skin, battle scars, well supposed, for all was not peaceful in this world. To the east were the Carib, who often came into these outlying islands and raided for slaves and take canoes and women. These scarred men would have been the first line of defense. The men that did not go to sea to gather and to fish with the great nets, carved utensils, bowls, and ceremonial items, they were quite good, and the carvings were quite intricate and detailed. The wood was mahogany and would be difficult to carve because of its hardness. The shells and stones used for carving held up quite well and did the job. The young and unmarried women were all naked all of the time, except on ceremonial occasions. They were quite fetching. The married women wore only a type of loincloth made of cotton. On the beach, some of the eligible young women would often flirt with him or find something amusing about him and giggle well around him. To them, he was an older man, even though he was frozen into his 20s by the blue magic around his neck. Here, a 20-year-old was way past marriageable age, and these young teenage women might have found something amusing and disturbing about that. They had probably wondered if he had a wife or several wives in that former life before washing ashore here, lost and clearly addled by the experience. However, he was handsome and well-formed, he thought. These people treated him well, even though they had no idea who he was or who he could be. The men would sometimes cast an uncomfortable glance in his direction. Could he be a Carib, the Losa enemy of the Taino? The strange-looking tall one who did not quite look Carib, but did not look Taino either. Was he from the coast, further north and west towards the sunset land? Willa could imagine them all thinking all of these things. He could only guess. The language was strange to him as he was strange to them. He could never know exactly what they thought of him or where he had come from. He must see what he came to see and depart as mysteriously as he had arrived. He had taken to being out here on the eastern beach every night. Tonight the clouds sat mostly on the horizon, and above him was a clear dome of the sky, black and riddled with stars, up in the middle of the sky, with lighter blues down near the tops of the clouds. here and now. There were no ambient ermine lights hitting the clouds, no jets or satellites streaking across the night sky, and no buoy lights bobbing upon the ocean. There were no sounds other than the natural sounds of the world. The sea was calm, and the wind was light coming out of the east. It would be a perfect night for a landing. It was on the 6th week of his presence here that he had learned that he heard the commotion in the middle of the night. A couple of the night fishing canoes were coming in hard and fast. The young fishermen were quite worked up, shouting words unknown to him as they paddled. The people woke and began to gather on the eastern shore of the quay, and they were putting their hands to their brows for a change. It appeared that the whole village was here. He figured it to be around 2 or 3 a.m. In spite of the lack of the bright moon in the sky, everything was quite visible, shadowy, but visible. His eyes had gotten used to the darkness, light without the constant glow of artificial light in the sky. Willow walked down close to the shore, but aloof from the cloud. A few of the children gathered with him, putting their hands to their brows and waiting. In a while, a light blue dot appeared far out on the northeastern horizon. Shortly, another dot appeared, and then another. After a while, the first dot became a blue-white square, and after a few moments, one could see a square sail with markings on it. Willow lifted his left arm and looked at his wrist. Again, he became aware that there was no watch on his wrist and that no clothing upon his body. He was impatient and getting nervous. The moment was arriving. In a half hour, Willow could see the 3 ships plainly. The lead vessel was the medium vessel, the Pinta, the fastest of the 3. The next would be the Santa Maria, the second vessel, and the third, the Nina. Willow thought they could hardly be called ships. They were small and really no longer than some of the canoes on the beach. They were certainly much slower than these Taino canoas. Willow thought that these 3 ships had looked strange sitting there, out of place. They stuck so far out of the water and seemed to possess the sky as they moved closer to the shore. Santa Maria moved up and dropped anchor first. The 2 others followed suit. The shouts and orders on board the ships were very loud compared to these Taino, who spoke quietly and respectfully at all times. The shouting young men who frantically paddled the canoes onto the beach were fast. So fast were the loudest he'd heard a Taino voice since he had arrived. The noise of these voices from the ships seemed to take possession of the air as well. The noises and the voices from the ships went on for some time before quieting almost to no sound at all except for the waves lapping against the 3 hulls. The sun would rise again in about 3 hours, Willow thought. They must be waiting for daylight to make their move. I'm skipping some stuff. Other boats were simultaneously offloaded from the Nina and the Pinta, rowing stations manned. Willow could plainly see the man who would be called Admiral Christopher Columbus as he finally climbed down the ladder and moved to sit in front of the boat, stepping from seat to seat. He was the obvious leader by the accommodations that the other men gave him. He was not dressed in heavy formal clothing as depicted in paintings made much later in history. He had on a plain shirt and the trousers of the time. His shirt was near white, likely linen, and the pants a dark brown and knee-length leather boots on his feet. He also wore a broad-rimmed hat for the protection from the sun, and an espada ropera, or what they called a Toledo sword. This rapier was the sword of the day. His sword belt hung like a sash from his shoulder to his hip. The remaining men wore the clothing of the time in mostly dark colors. Willow counted 14 heads. After Columbus boarded the boat, a T-shaped staff with a rolled-up banner was handed down to the coxswain. He, in turn, handed them to the men sitting between the rowers. The two smaller banners followed. The men held the banners up and unfurled them. Next came a medium-sized sea chest, likely full of beads and trinkets. After a while, the boats from the smaller ships moved up to just behind Admiral's boat, and they waited. Willow saw no weapons on any of the men, no swords, no lances, and no armor. A decision had been made to risk coming ashore in a gesture of peace and trade. In Columbus's mind, these people, after all, were not Native Americans, but Asians. Columbus thought that he was very close to Sipan Guo, Japan. He could even be on the outer edges of the waters of India. In the many depictions of this moment, there were always many swords and men in armor. None of that in sight now. There was, however, a harquebus, or a small swivel cannon mounted on the bow of the first boat. I'm used to not saying boat. It pointed skyward. Soon Willow could hear the sound of locked oars knocking and the blades splashing in the water. The small boats began their movement to the shore. The coxswain steered and spoke the word "ho" for each stroke of the oars. The rowing was clean and precise. In a bit, the first boat ground ashore on the white sand. The moment was almost upon them. As the boat skidded onto the beach, the coxswain ordered the oars to be stowed. The oars were dismounted and laid just inside the gunwales of the boat. A man from each side of the boat jumped out and steadied the craft in a light surf, and another leapt from the bow, pulling a mooring rope with him and stepping onto the dry beach. Together, the three men spoke the word "uno," paused, and spoke "dos." On "dos," they heaved the boat forward until it was higher up on the beach. The remaining men leapt out of the boat, and they heaved again to bring the boat further out of the water. The remaining two longboats came ashore in the same manner. They were all well-trained and experienced seamen. Columbus remained sitting in front of the boat as he gazed at these new and strange people gathered on the beach before him. It was said that Columbus spoke Castilian Spanish. Willow supposed that he would soon find out. Columbus finally removed his hat, placed it on the seat behind him, and then stood and adjusted his sword so that it rested across his chest, and held it in his right hand. He sat backward on the gunwales and swung his legs one at a time, clockwise and outboard, and slid onto the sandy beach. He readjusted the sword so that it rested upon his left hip. He stepped forward toward the onlookers and waved the men holding the three staffs to move behind him. When they arrived directly behind him, he knelt on one knee in the sand and bowed his head and spoke a prayer almost under his breath. He stood and drew his sword and raised it to the sky. The natives did not move. They just watched a stray man perform his ritual landing ceremony. The moment was here. Willow had expected more from this scene unfolding in front of him. He knew that the depictions of this moment were likely to be a little off-kilter compared to the actual event, but what he had witnessed so far did not fit into the old imagery at all. This was real. Columbus began speaking Castilian, which Willow understood somewhat. Columbus did much of this in his log entries and other writings in Latin. This was well known. These words poured from Custer's mouth. En el nombre de Fernando y Isabel y en el nombre de Jesucristo, nuestro Salvador y Señor nuestro Dios, obro esta tierra para el comercio con España. Amen. Willow translated the words in his head. Roughly, Columbus had just opened this land and its people to the Word of God and Jesus Christ, and had sort of claimed it for Ferdinand and Isabella. However, claim was not in his little speech. Columbus was known to be a devout Christian, or said that he was. He was more likely to make a claim for God and Jesus than for Ferdinand and Isabella. Of course, in his log, he proclaimed much more than he spoke in that short moment. Especially in letters to the king and queen, he spoke much for the crown than for God and Christ. Columbus then put his sword back into the scabbard and put on a smile as he stepped forward to greet his new friends. He put his right hand flat against his chest and spoke the word, Christopher. That would have been the name that he grew up with, the name that his friends at home called him. He spoke his name quickly without a lot of accent, as would his neighbors in central and southern Italy. Then he put out his hand, perhaps to shake hands. Some of the older men stepped forward and took his hand loosely, more like a touch. Christopher's men then stepped forward, touched the flats of their hands to their chest, and spoke their names. The children and the women then came forward and began touching the new arrivals. Some of the elders stepped forward, laid a hand upon their chest, and spoke the word, Christopher. One of the warriors stepped forward and touched Christopher's sword scabbard. Christopher then drew the sword again and held it forward. The warrior grabbed the blade and cut himself on both sides of the double blade, leaving parallel deep cuts on his fingers and palms. He stepped back with a look of amazement on his face. A woman stepped forward and wrapped his hand with her cotton loincloth. Christopher then put the sword away, realizing that steel that apparently did not exist in this world. He did not want to offend. The woman pulled the warrior away and back to the batey to tend his wounds. Meanwhile, those on the beach began to touch her chest with the flat of the hand and spoke each of the names of these men who dressed themselves, covered their bodies with this harsh cloth. The coxswain stepped back to the falua and brought a small chest to the beach and placed it in the sand. Christopher went to the chest and opened it and began giving the trinkets to the villagers on the beach. In return, the Taino began to offer up their own ornaments in return. Among some of the ornaments were earrings and necklaces of gold.
Okay, we're going to listen to, or we would like to listen to, or if he wants to share with us, is Glenn Evans. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's give him a good hand here.
Thank you. You know, Gerardo Galano, the famous Uruguay writer, has this to say about 1492. It's called Discovery. In 1492, the natives discovered they were Indians. They discovered they lived in America. They discovered they were naked. They discovered there was sin. They discovered they owed obedience to a king and queen from another world and a god from another heaven. And this god had invented guilt and clothing, and had ordered burned alive all those who worshiped the sun, the moon, the earth, and the rain that moistened it. Well, I grew up in central Oklahoma, capital of the Seminole Nation, and I attended school with many Seminole Indians. They were good friends, and even attended school with the great-granddaughter of the famous Seminole chief, Governor Brown. This poem transpired, in other words, this poem inspired my childhood memories. Old Braves. Can you hear me okay? Is that better? Okay. Well, on the sidewalks of Wewoka, capital of the Seminole Nation, aged ones sat upon the street, legs folded, backs against the wall. Memories of childhoods in other places. Some had fought in the Indian Wars, some rotted away on whiskey and wine. Regrets and hurts that burned their hearts, shielded with a thin smile as a small child walked by. When I think about nature, I think about Indians, their spirituality, and the way they honored nature and Mother Earth, and believed that they were a part of nature and had no need or desire to conquer her. They lived here thousands of years and still had a Garden of Eden. And with not much more than 300 years, look what has been done here in the USA. Sacred moment. Breech clout head wrap is only apparel. Apache stands on stones in the river. Clear, cool water runs over his feet. Alert he listens to the quiet trickle. Forest bird calls, breeze in the trees. Spirit music for a soul that is free. This is called Magic Circle. Each night, moon chased the sun's shadow. When the land grew tired and needed to rest, our people lived in teepees, moved around. We lived with the wind, the flowers, the grasses that fed the buffalo, our food, shelter. Under the sun, the stars, the land grew well. Warm, cold, good, bad, chased each other's tails. Sun always came back, wiped away winter. Life was good and went on forever. Wasuchi came, killed the buffalo for tongue and hide, left the rest to rot. The magic circle was broken. Now Wasuchi makes holes in the sky that will send us all to the spirit land. When we become spirits, earth will rest, hole in the sky will mend. Indians come back. Buffalo will return to the prairie. The magic circle begins again. I have an ongoing campaign with the mayor and the Seattle City Council to give the Duwamish one of our parks, namely Madison Park in particular, as a reservation promised them over 150 years ago. Well, you can imagine how much response I'm getting. Well, my name is Wolf. My name is Wolf, some call me Timberwolf. I often think about those stand-up creatures, wonder if they get enough oxygen. All their fights over wars and religions. I have no religion, but eat when hungry, sleep when I'm tired, feed my little ones. My God is not a jealous, vacillating creature who shows favoritism. No, he created us all. His spirit touches rocks, trees, all life. He didn't make warring religions. These stand-up creatures made them. I've never seen any Baptist bears, Methodist monkeys, Presbyterian panthers, Jewish jackasses, or Catholic camels. Muslim mooses or Hindu hawks. Hell no, we're just plain animals with blood that bleeds the same color. Some of us walk and some of us fly. Survive, give the others some room. Only eat each other when hunger makes it necessary. I don't believe things are made or unmade. They just change form. What will I be next time? Only the Creator knows. He or she probably doesn't give a damn whether I'm a rock, plant, or animal. We may be made in His image, but prove it. I don't know anyone who's been there and made it back, regardless of how much baying we do at the moon. You know, in 1940, my father, National Guard unit was called up for World War II, and we visited him at Fort Sill. And at the time, I didn't know that Geronimo was buried there, but later Geronimo became my real hero. And this poem here is a poem of what Geronimo might have been thinking while he was at Fort Sill. Old Geronimo, once I was free, ran like the deer, gone my youth, my manhood, my days of war. Now a prisoner in a white man's stockade, forth from my home in the desert. You promised me freedom when I made no more war, but my only freedom is my memory, roaming prairies, climbing hills. My woman, my little ones, murdered by Mexicans. Now old and weary, it will not be long before my bones join the earth. Then my spirit will be free again. My grandmother was a quarter Cherokee, so she inspired this poem. It's called My People. Soldiers made us walk winter's deadly way. Tears shed for many left on that trail. White man promised us new land to own. Our Cherokee band believed this wild tale, came to the land of brown sand and red clay. We thank the Great Spirit for this new home. It was a good land for cattle and hay. Long as the rivers run, it was ours to own. Healed our wounds, learned to write our own language, built log cabins, raised hay, cattle, and corn. Our children learned to speak the white man's language. A new Cherokee nation we made. Then from the four winds came more whites. A race behind mules, on horses, some walked with great speed. They moved across our land. Good people, bad people, men with fast talk. Some cheated, had pride to be called sooner. My people looked on. We could make no stand, only watch as they came. These land grabbers broke our hearts when they took our land. Where once we were a mighty nation, abandoned bones of our grandfathers still weep in the hills of a southern land as blood of their grandchildren seep homeward. When I was young, my father spoke, told me things I did not understand. We sat cross-legged and faced each other under a blackjack oak tree out in the field. Day was warm and sunny. Under the blue sky, redbird in the tree chirped its song. Grasshoppers and butterflies flew about. As we sat there, my grandfather said to me, "My son, I am old. I will not be long. The earth cries for our wisdom. Most of the bear are now no more. No buffalo roam free. Fox and wolf have no place to go. These things were many when I was young. My grandfathers were unwise men. They welcomed invaders as friends and gods. When they came to know this was foolish, they fought and argued among themselves. The enemy grew stronger, we grew weaker. Many died from white men's sickness. Now, too late to fight, we are beaten. We are few, they are many. Bear and buffalo are gone. Fox and wolf have no place to go. I hear the earth cry for our wisdom. Time will come when only the foolish rule, and their foolish ways destroy, and the bear and wolf have no place to go. I hear the earth cry for our wisdom. You must learn to lead these people, my son. Love and protect this place that is our home. Room for bear and wolf and all people. I hear the earth cry for our wisdom. Years have passed since my grandfather spoke. I know what he was trying to tell me. They cannot hear my grandfather's voice. I hear the earth cry for our wisdom. And then one last short poem, A Light That Still Burns. When Wasuchi came, Indian civilization was where whites were 3,000 years before. At that time, there was a small light burning that could have flashed into a great civilization. But the white hordes with disease and weapons thought they snuffed out this light forever. But in the hearts of every true Indian, there is still a flicker of this light. Thank you.
Tribal member Blake Shellifold. This better be a good story. This better be really good story.
All these kind people here are waiting for a good story. It seems like. How are you guys doing today? Looks broken. Oh, I can hold it. My arms are getting weak, though. They call me Grandpa Spirit. Yeah, that's what they call me when I start telling stories. I get into the mode, and I like talking like this. So they started calling me Grandpa Spirit. Oh, hey, grandson. My name is Blake Shellifold. I'm a Duwamish tribal member. Everyone's heard of Bigfoot, huh? Do I need to fix the mic? Oh. Am I doing something wrong? This is part of my story, by the way. This is how I like to tell stories. I like to engage people. Everyone's heard of Bigfoot, right? Oh, yes, the Bigfoot. The big, scary, hairy beast that stands 8 feet tall, over 200 pounds of muscle and fur. Well, that's what everyone says what he looks like. Oh, but I've seen him long time ago. There was peace in the land. The little people got along with the big people. The colored people got along with the non-colored people. The birds in the sky, they sang. The bears and the wolves. The squirrels. The chipmunks, they all got along. And, where I was raised, when you're listening to a story, you say a simple word so the storyteller knows that you're listening. It's habu. Can everyone say habu? Ah, I know you're listening. I didn't lose ya. I'm getting old and deaf. Sorry. But the true story of the big people, the Bigfoot, starts from the little people. These little people, also known as the stick people, are not so nice. They didn't like the peace. They didn't like how everyone got along. They especially didn't like us humans. We were so friendly. We walked around tall and proud until we got old like me, and now we're hunched over. Ah, you're listening. This thing's kind of heavy. Is it fixable? There we go. I like to move around. I don't like using a mic. Everybody hear me? Yeah. Awesome. Yes, thank you. So, these little people, they were so angry about how the humans would walk tall and walk proud. We would walk and we would be able to hunt. The animals would let us hunt them because we honored them, we respected them. Oh, but the little people, they were too small and skinny. And they walked like this. Oh, they were so angry. Oh, them humans. Look at them so tall over there. Oh, what can we do about this? We have to stop them from being so proudful. And they couldn't speak right either. Their English was horrible. Well, at least to me it was horrible. Thank you. And, us humans, we lived our lives happily. And then we started hearing noises. Loud screams. Shrieks. You should jump out of your chair. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. But I forget to mention this was kind of a scary story. Oh, and how these screams were so loud. And us humans, we were worried. And anyone that's ever seen a Sasquatch, anyone that's ever heard a Sasquatch knows what I'm talking about. I've heard of them. Oh, how their voices are deep and scary, and they have bright red eyes. But the little people, these little people are so smart. I know what we can do. Oh, we can scare these humans. We can so scare these humans. We can scare us. But they didn't know what to do. You see, they were smart, but they were too small. We would laugh. They would try hopping out of the bushes. Really? What are you doing? I could have stepped on you. That's what we would say to them. They're so small, but they were smart. Back then, it was easier to leave your body. It's what's called nowadays is astral projection. But back then, we called it spiritual traveling. And how our spirits would travel. We would fly, and we would go places that we've never been before with our spirits. And we would let our spirits carry us places, and we would come back and have that experience. The little people had the same thing, but they knew how to morph themselves. Oh, how the little people, it's not what, we can't scare these guys just from popping out of bushes. One of them was smarter than the They were worried. They were like, what are you talking about? You're going mad. You're going mad.
No, no. We can scare them. I think there's something else out there, so they won't come in the woods, and they won't come after us and step all over us.
Oh, our favorite place back then was the woods. We would go back and we would have our visions in the woods. We would go back to the woods and cut down our trees for our longhouses. We would go back in the woods and we would cut down our trees for our canoes. We used cedar for everything. But the little people, they loved the cedar too. They built their little houses out of it. And then they would build a side house in a garage. Every once in a while, you'd see one driving a car, even though they didn't have a license. Oh, did I mention this is a funny story too? Oh, and how they treasured these cedar trees. And humans, we were very respectful. We would always pray to the cedar tree and thank the cedar tree for what he is about to give us. We loved the cedar trees, but the little people hated that we loved the cedar trees. So to stop us from going into the woods, these little people, they thought real hard and they sat and they meditated. Almost like this. And they were able to create an image of a big, tall, scary creature that's in the middle of the night. Oh, the noise was scary. So what they did was they projected themselves as a big, scary image, and they were able to give them red eyes and stand 8 feet tall. And they would stand. If you notice, you never hear about Sasquatches, Bigfoots, Yetis stepping in your backyard. Those stories, those stories are from crazy people. Trust me, I've seen a Bigfoot, and he always stands on the edge of the woods. He's always protecting the woods. So people think of the Sasquatch as this big, scary creature. But he's not. He's just a little person. That's the end of my story.
Our next speaker is, I don't know where he went. He was getting awful anxious. Red Wolf Pope.
In my mother's language, that means my name is Red Wolf. I am Tekwidi, which is brown bear. Bear paw house, eagle moiety from Yakutat village. Ninaniha angaisha, ninania dosawi nui. Sohobi nui sogovia. In my father's language, I am Shoshone, and I'm of the White Knives from Nevada, near South Fork, Duck Valley Reservation, born among the Tomokes in Elko, Nevada. So this is a way I was taught to introduce myself, from my mother's Tlingit people, my father's Shoshone people, and here I am in the middle, and I want to pay my respects to the Duwamish. Thank you for having us all here in your longhouse and on your lands. I wanted to take this chance to introduce myself. I am on a fellowship with Representative Jim McDermott, and was asked to help move the Duwamish recognition struggle forward. I've recently I'm hoping I can earn that. Recently, I finished law school at Seattle University, and I'm in the joint degree program, so I'm taking the master's courses now, the MPA Policy Analysis. I wanted to speak a little bit about this day, what it means, and why I chose to do this. Many times you hear people talk about Seattle. You hear people talk about Chief Seattle. You hear people talk about his speeches. The environmentalists love to cite his words about taking care of the earth. We do not belong, or the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. They love that line. And yet, the descendants of Chief Seattle are never mentioned. All these things happen on this land, on the dust of the ancestors. When I was raised in Nevada, and when I was in the village in Alaska, they told me literally, when we talk about our ancestors, we've been in these lands so long. So many of our people have lived and died here. So many of our bodies have returned to the earth that is the dust of our ancestors we walk upon. This longhouse was built upon the dust of Duwamish ancestors. And so these cedars grew in the dust of those ancestors. That's how they come back to us, and they build the bones of this, this longhouse. There used to be 94 around this Puget Sound. They were burned down one by one during the colonial process. It's good to see that at least one has come back to this area. And so this is a long process. This is Indian law. Studying Indian law was very frustrating. This is being the Jews if Hitler had won World War II. The Holocaust would never be spoken of. The effects on the Jewish people would never be spoken of. And that's what happened to Native people. People ask, why don't you just get over it? They don't ask that to the Jews. They don't say, why you still mention the Holocaust? Get over it. That's called anti-Semitism. But people do that to natives every day. This didn't just happen a long time ago. The effects still happen. My family, members of my family were taken into the boarding schools and beaten. Members of my family, my immediate family, were adopted out. My grandmother was sold as a slave. 5 of my aunts and uncles have been murdered. I don't even want to recount the rapes. None of that was ever prosecuted. I remember wondering, when I was little, why it became this way, how this all happened to our people. And I relearned it. I was one of 6 men in a Native dance group in my senior year of high school. And by the end of my senior year, I was the last one left. The rest had ended up locked up, and one was dead. And I was the one that made it. They always said, you're going to be the one who makes it. They already had given up for themselves. The pain inside them was too much. The things that had happened to them were too much. They had too much anger. Even relearning our own history, we go through the stages of grief, and I want you all to watch for the young ones out there that are learning their history. They're going to go through this process. It's shocking to them. They have to learn what happened to us so we can change it. But at the same time, we have to understand what it's going to do to them to learn this, to learn what's been taken from them. I really appreciate being able to be here today and see the Duwamish people coming back stronger. It's nice to see young storytellers out there too, and especially because they have another little storyteller on the way. And so I want to honor that. But these things, these days, they have to continue. They have to, this kind of a day, this has to be every day. And so I'm hoping that as this struggle moves forward, I know that there's many different ways that our people have to heal. And this takes legal work, yes, but it also takes legislative work. And so I am working in the courts there's a case before Judge Cohenauer. And there's also a bill that Representative McDermott has introduced. And I've been speaking with tribal leaders and trying to get more of them on board with support. And so as this moves forward and we all stand together, we have to remember Chief Seattle talked about also this time. He saw a time when he said the ghosts of my people would be walking among, the cities. And he said these streets of Seattle, the people that would think they were empty, but they're not. The ghosts of the ancestors are still there. And so that's why we're able to be here today, is because those ancestors are strong and they want the people to continue. This is not something that ever was meant to die out. We need the people to understand the history of the land that they stand upon, and that this history spans all the way back to time immemorial. This is Duwamish land. This is a Duwamish Longhouse, and it is an honor to be here working for the Duwamish people. Healing is a hard, long process, and ceremony is a large part of it. And I can do what I can in the courts. I'm only there because my people prayed for me. They wanted there to be at least one member of the Shoshone who made it to law school. Not many members of that tribe make it out of high school. But I was the one that the elders took, and they would have me sit in the corner and listen. I was the one that they gave a name, before I was even born. They just said, okay, this is going to be his Indian name. It's the only name he's ever going to get. And so these kinds of things have to happen more. We have to take our names back. We have to take our culture back. We have to take and be proud of who we are again. We're not a defeated people. We're still here. They didn't want us to be here. And so the fact that this exists, that shows that we are not a defeated people. We need to tell our youth that. We need to reach out to the other communities and reach out to them as the true owners of the land. The Duwamish people, this is your land. When I'm in Nevada, that's our land. When Alaska, this is the mindset we have to change for the young ones so that they can grow up and say, yes, I am proud to be Indian. I am proud that my people have been here forever, and all these other races, all these other ethnicities have come here, and I've welcomed them onto my land. I am that ambassador of my people. I carry my culture with me, and I want, therefore, to introduce someone else who's also working on these topics. I can work in the courts, I can work in the legislature, but in the old days, there was always the village, and there was the warriors who would go out and fight. And in my family, those were the Dosowi, those were the White Knives. And that's on my Shoshone side. And for Yakutat, where my mother's people come from, that was the Tekwedi. And in both cases, it was represented by knives. In the Shoshones, we had a white knife made of white obsidian. To this day, the geologists even call it Dosowi chert. They don't even know where that name comes from. In the Tekwedi, we had a copper knife, double-sided. And in both cases, it was that we would go and we'd stand, we'd be that barrier. We'd be that barrier between the outside world that's always trying to consume what's left of us. And it's not even always that these other groups do it in a negative way. It's just that they're all fighting for the fair share of the pie. But they forget that it was our pie, And so these warriors had to change because the battles happen on paper now. And so what used to be knives had to become pens. What used to be shields had to become briefcases. And I had to spend a long and hard 3 years among people who would make a lot of very unpleasant statements about Native people. And I knew I had to be there to get that knowledge so that I could go and be a barrier. And it means that I can't always be in places like this. I can't always be part of the ceremonies. But when those warriors would go out there and protect that, it's because the people back home were still able to tell stories, that the youth were still able to eat the traditional foods and learn the stories and spend time with the elders. And so I'm doing what I can. I cannot promise anything except to do my best, and I'll keep praying for the right way to approach these things, and I'll hope that the second time the Duwamish get recognized, that it won't be taken away. But we've always recognized Duwamish as Native people. And what we're really just trying to do is get the government to stop lying to itself about what we all know. So I want to thank you for your time and for your indulgence, and I will try to do my best. And I would like to introduce someone who's working on the other end of things. As I head out and try to be that barrier, there's people working to heal our villages back home, so that those of us who go out to protect things, there is actually something to protect. If Jay would like to come forward and speak about her work on healing, I think that this is very appropriate for everybody here. We were just down among a lot of the tribal leaders at the Centennial Accord, and the question kept coming up. Things are happening, our youth are doing things, and we don't understand. And so, Gulashish, this is Jay, she's also from my village, and I would like to pass the mic to her and thank all of you. Aishandaga, Guneshish.
Hello, my name is Jameisha Merkuliev. I'm also known as Jay Masikin Shada, and there is a story behind that. What I do is my passion, and I found a way to make it my living. Columbus Day brings a lot of emotion to my people. I'm Aleut from St. Paul and Fairbanks. I grew up with a lot of my Aleut family. I'm also Tlingit from Yakutat, and the struggle is all too real to me. I studied adverse childhood experiences studies. I worked in Snohomish County and helped 5 youth councils and 2 youth groups do community work and fight their adversities. We did campaigns about suicide prevention, and that's when it all changed, because I realized the suicide rate in Indian country. And I know why it happened, and I know what's wrong, and I've seen the studies, and I know how to help. My grandparents raised me. They're all in their 70s and 80s. They've all passed now. Alaska became a state in '59. My godfather that raised me was born in '31. He lived through it. He saw it. And these weren't people living in igloos. These were successful people. They had, my great-grandfather, Victor Masikin, owned the first coffee shop in the Bering Sea before the settlers came. That term, settlers, is insulting. They took our land, they took our money by force. They beat my grandparents not to speak their language. They threatened their families if they didn't. We lost a lot of family members that didn't want to conform. They'd rather die. So now, being here, it was really hard being away from home. I came here to give my children a better life. But somebody told me there's 90,000 natives in Seattle. You think you're the only one that feels lost? You think you're the only one that feels lonely for that culture? And I'm not. So what I'm trying to do is inform people about this study. The study is real. It's a science, and it shows whether you're a boy or a girl, at what age, and what stage of your life. There's 10 adversities studied, 3 forms of abuse, 3 forms of manipulation, and there's other factors, whether you had a mentally ill parent, absent parent, divorced parents, plays a part in it. All those are studied, well studied. And there's a format to approach people that are like that, with these odd behaviors. These people are suffering. When you see people on the reservations and they're in gangs and they're in alcohol and they're on drugs, it's because they're feeling a void. And it's very unfortunate, the dysfunction that gets passed down through generations because of what has happened to our culture. I know because my family suffered the same dysfunction. I'm here alone in the city with my kids. And it's very important for me to bring that culture back. And I have a plan. I will inform all community agencies and all tribes about adverse childhood experiences studies. Tell them that there is a way to approach these people and a way to help these people. And all I want to do is be the link. That's all I want. And the way to combat that and bring us back and bring them back from that is to reintroduce their culture daily. Every single day, my kids should be in their regalia, going to school, respected by their peers, respected by the faculty. And maybe that would bring about some accurate education about our history. Because it's swept under the rug. Nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to talk about what happened to the natives. But it's important that they know. I teach my children what happened to my grandparents. I teach them what happened to me. Why my life was so hard. Why my family was so dysfunctional. And all the things that I've learned helping all these youth around the county in Snohomish, I'm going to try to bring to Seattle, to the natives. I think it's very important to empower our culture on a regular basis, implement cultural hobbies on a regular basis, and not be afraid to share it with the community. If you can give these people back their pride, you can encourage them to find ways to accomplish their goals, to get off drugs, to get off alcohol. It will give them what they need. The hobbies will give them what they need. And if they know what is wrong with them, they can heal themselves and they can turn around and know how to approach their peers and heal themselves. It's all a circle of healing. A lot of people ask me why I want to do this. Why don't I go into insurance? Why don't I go into modeling? It's because those two children right there, Ariana, sit down. They need to know the culture. They need to know what has happened to our family and how we can gain it back. I'm going to make them cultural ambassadors that carry their culture inside them. We will be the example for what I'm trying to do. Because I have lost my culture. It's been stripped from me. Because my family was unstable and I grew up in foster care, passed around to different family members, and it's not uncommon. That is not uncommon on any reservation. I can count 30 or 40 friends of mine that grew up in the same environment. And it's time for a change, it's time for healing, it's time to reclaim, rebuild, and revive our culture. And that's what I'm going to try to do. I just wanted to share that with you guys.
First is Steve Snyder. Is he here?
I too don't use microphones very much because I'm Haida and I'm Tsimshian. I am Haida and Tsimshian. I was raised to be proud. I was fortunate to come from a strong family. To speak loud. We speak over the waters. This is our highway. This is how we travel. And so when we're in public and stuff, I'm Leshgit, Eagle. My mom's mom was Haida from Masset. So I'm related to Edenshaw. And for those who know Bobby Peel or Sedutz, I'm also related to him. But today I wanted to say, I put maybe on Facebook, and my sister Patricia over here phoned up, asked me if I was going to come today, and I said, oh, I forgot about that. I'm getting so forgetful. I was supposed to be at a Leonard Peltier gathering where I live in Seattle. I forgot about that. But I'm so glad that my sister has a better memory than I do. Tomorrow I'm going to be here for Seattle gathering, and it's to give honor to our Creator. We have a prayer circle. I've been asked to do some songs. I'm going to do some songs in Haida. I'm going to do some songs in Tsimshian. Took a long time to really want to share that to other people, because I only really felt like it meant something to my own people. So I was reluctant to share it with white people. I was reluctant to share it with black people. I was reluctant to share it with Asian people, because I didn't think they cared. I thought my father, who is German, that's where the Snyder comes in, I thought he was the only one, the only unique person that understood our culture. But tomorrow's gathering starts at 1:30, and I'm really hoping, and I'm praying, because we do pray. We pray in a circle. And most of the service is in Lashutsi. I took Lashutsi at the University of Washington from Conrad Edwards, who learned it from Vi Hilbert. And I knew a lot of it, but you don't get the chance to speak it to anybody. Well, I'll have to come over and join you. And that's true about Haida and Tsimshian. It was so nice to hear this gentleman here. Your Tlinkit's really good. I don't speak it, but I've heard a lot of it. So I didn't think I was going to talk this much, but something has just surfaced inside after this young lady spoke. In 1992, we had a gathering at the Labor Temple. It was 1992. We had 500 people in the Labor Temple downtown. And it was called Rethinking Christopher Columbus. I was angry then, but I still thought it should be peaceful, because over the years, I've learned forgiveness. That was the first step, was forgiveness, for me to grow. And I too have experienced a lot of pain, but when you hear someone else speak about it and acknowledge it, we don't have to ball it up inside. We can release it. Today I heard this was to be a celebration. I'm hoping to see more smiling faces, so I want everyone to stand up and shake somebody's hand. Give somebody a hug. Love on somebody.
Thank you. Now we'll have Patricia.
Ahia, Duwamish, Dene, Yat Shik Shidene. Thank you to the Duwamish people. Yat Shik Shidene, all my relatives. A Mississippi band of Choctaw, Nshle, Tkachi ni Bashil Chin. Although Mississippi band of Choctaw, Ada Shache, Kia Ani, Ada Shanala, the in the Ne, Biaja Nshle, Ado Nihidle. Each and every one of us is a precious child of Creator. And I live in Seattle for 11 years. And in that period of time, I learned that the Japanese Shinto masters came into this area, and they were able to diagnose that many, many people were poisoned with food in this area, in the Puget Sound. That's something we don't read about or that we know. And those Japanese Shinto masters took care of those people. So I wanted to say that to you. That's something I know about the area, having lived here. And I have traveled to 8 different countries to teach win-win decision making. We're using our creative imagination. We call it ehozen. It means our whole brain thinking is for the creative solution. So right now we're destroying the planet and the environment and humanity with win-lose. I have to kill you so I can live. I have to steal from you so I can hoard. And so that's my message all the way from Denepikea. That is where I'm born, where I grew up. I also went to boarding school. My parents went to boarding school. And yes, we were all told not to look Indian, don't act Indian, don't talk Indian, don't go to ceremony, don't drink, don't drum, don't sing like that, because we were all going to hell. We were told that at a very, very young child. And that's something I addressed at Indigenous Day on Westlake today earlier. Thank you to my friends that brought me here, and for this time to say thank you for your interest in this next generation, because the empire has taught Indigenous people all over the world to fight each other and to kill themselves and kill each other and then blame the victim. So we have to put a stop to that. Let's do it by win-win decision making. How does your gift support my survival and my gift support our collective survival? Ahiahat, Duwamish, Dene, Hojo Nahasli, Hojo Nahasli, Hojo Nahasli, Hojo Nahasli.
Thank you. Herb McLeese.
First of all, I would like to thank you for for inviting a non-Native American to this gathering. I'm a poet in my avocation as a retired person, and this work that I'm going to present came to me somewhat as a dream, and I'm a little embarrassed by it because I can't understand how I would come to this material. I would like to dedicate it to the memory of Bernie Whitebear, who supported a federal appointment that I was going for back in 1993. It's called Eagle Pass. O surrounding countless chorus, we're joined in celebration, fellow creatures of the Spirit, all naked under heaven. The cicada's voice, thin and dry, fills the air of our sacred ground on a bluff, exposed and high, a place for our drums' healing sound. In the west, I can see by the buck moon's light twin mesas silhouette and the pass. But as I watch, they fade to scrim, diversions for my brooding thoughts on the study, incidents of alcoholism in single-parent tribal households, presented today in council. But the drum circle works its magic, and thoughts fade into musings, and soon I am surfing drumbeat waves with turtle shell rattles, insistent frisks, the spray. Around me, dozing elders, mothers singing softly to little ones, snug in their arms. And ah, yes, teenagers in dreamy silence. The drum rhythm begins to change, assuming a lame horse gait. A spellcaster, hypnotic and sky-reaching. Even the stars begin to sway, then to dance in waves, rippling heaven's drumhead. Now, slow drumming begins. Beaten from the heart, hard won. folded with the Spirit. Bless the drummers. The drumming morphs into a lullaby. Forgotten, yet familiar. Which the women begin to sing. Some chant into darkness. And joining them, do you hear? Crossing river, my mother. The Milky Way's ghostly band sweeps down beyond the mesas, over the road, through Eagle Pass, for an old spirit's journey. Someday soon, someday soon. Thank you.
Ann Mullen.
Hello. In Yosemite, where I live, the First Nation people, the Awanichi, perform a bear dance every spring to welcome Ushumache, the native bear, back. And Ushumache brings spring and health and vigor back to the people. I was privileged to watch one of these bear dances, and I was kind of worried because sitting still is not my long suit. As a child, nap time was torture, fidget, get in trouble. I was afraid I'd embarrass Dan and be asked to leave, but it wasn't like that at all. The minute you got into the oak grove, you knew you were in a sacred place. You knew because everything was different. Not a little bit different, like walking into a cathedral, but really different, like plunging into water where gravity is revoked. In this place, time was revoked, it was changed, and this is what happened. Bear dance night. This time is not like our time with its spiky necessities. This time is softer, patient as a glacier, gently intimate, flowing into every corner, yet inconceivably vast, embracing everything that ever was or will be, everything that is, under the ancient oaks full of leaves and stars. Fires burn softly, voices are soft, even in laughter. The roundhouse gathers us in. We drop a pinch of tobacco into the fire that our prayers may be carried to heaven. Quietly, holding wormwood wands, we circle the fire and sit until Uchumachi comes to bring summer back.
Hello, everyone. We're going to provide a song here in a minute, but I'd also like to apologize for, the. Well, okay. My name is Workman. I've only had one name, very much like Red Wolf. Yayustubs is how you say workman in Lashutseed. So Yayustubs tidsta. I am Workman. Guathte duftuabs the Ishechad of the Duwamish tribe. And great great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle. So this would be my formal Indian announcement, how I announce my name. Thank you. And now what we'd like to do is sing a song, Lake Shalafos Hawk Song.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Dan Williams came all the way from Yosemite, so let's give him 3 minutes.
I'll try to take less than that, Jack. Yosemite these days, which is the ancestral home of the Miwok, the Awanichi, and the Paiute people of Central California, has been all about fire, as you probably know from the news, the rim fire. We've had a real bad year in terms of drought and dryness, and Mother Nature decides once in a while that she's going to do something about that forest, maybe put a few more cedars or a few more oaks in it. So every 100 years, she decides to change the landscape, and that's what's happened, using thunder and lightning and all the exciting things that we find in the natural world. We came up here looking for rain. We didn't get much rain last year. So thank you very much. We enjoyed that. And so I happened to bring with me a dry poem, or at least partially a dry poem, that I would like to share with you this evening. And thank you so much for allowing us to be here in your Longhouse. Saying thanks to the Spirit. On the 242nd day without rain, the azaleas drooped, then died. 3 days later, huge thunderheads brought all the rain all at once. 8-month-old babies had never seen it before. There were ravens, bears, and deer who'd never felt it on wings or backs. Squirrels began to wonder about and doubt their instinct for winter. The small stream near my cabin, a slick mud hole, scabrous with green slime, 50 trout caught in the warm, foul-smelling water, wiggling next to each other with nowhere to go, no way forward, no way backward, a live vibration of silver just under the surface, awaiting predators to claw them out onto hot rocks and devour them. Raindrops came slowly at first, clouds darkening the earth, then thunderstorm cannons down canyon announcing a rain growing miraculous, a solid curtain of wet blowing and twisting in its own texture like smoke rising from platinum fire, water pooling where there had been only dust, rivulets shove pine needles aside, hot ozone smell replaced by wet mint. Now long devouring fires of summer have been quenched, the forest around them freshened, glistening and green, the trout, arisen with the water spilling over the stones, escape downstream to move about freely in gray and white water, the azaleas down deep at root planning a comeback, our planet whispering a grateful thanks to the great spirit of the world. Thank you.
Ibrahim Sudi, who came from Egypt.
I have been living in Seattle here for a little over 10 years. And tonight I actually feel like I am really home. By being in this place, it feels like being home. I am honored to be in the house of the Duwamish tribe. And when I first came, Barbara actually said to the people around here that if you want to know anything about the light rail, this is the guy to talk to. I am a structural engineer, and I am Canadian, actually, citizen as well. And I was one of the engineers who designed the light rail in Vancouver, BC. And when Seattle wanted to have one, they phoned me, the consultant working on the job, and said, would you like to come here, help us build the light rail? And I came, I remember the first day they were showing them the maps in the offices of Sound Transit. And I noticed the name of a street called West Marginal Way. And I was like, kind of perplexed, and they said, is there something wrong? And I said, if I give 3 people the task of going into a room to name a street, and they came out and said, we chose West Marginal Way, I would shoot them. Because there are beautiful names for nature, for birds, for animals, people who did good things for the society. I think actually that street should be called the Duwamish Way, not West Marginal Way. 20 years ago, if you go to the campus of the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, there is a Longhouse. It's actually maybe bigger in size than this one, but the person talking to you now is actually one of the engineers who were honored to be part of the design of the Longhouse on the campus of the University of British Columbia. Barbara did not know that before now, but now you know that actually one of my jobs in North America here was actually to design the Longhouse in Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah. The last thing I will say is this. About 15 years ago, I was given the task of going to a native reserve in Prince George, which is, it feels awkward to me to say Prince George in a place where the natives actually are living. And, but that's not the point. The point is I lived on the reserve for 3 days, and it gave me a real first look of what happens on the reserve and the problems and so on. But the reason I went there actually is because of something that's inspiring in a way. There is a dock with a ferry that services the island, And the dock was designed only for pedestrian traffic. The ferry would come, people bring their food or stuff. But actually the natives living on that reserve went ahead and cast concrete on top of the dock because they wanted to put a machine to process the fish they were going to fish from the sea. And of course, the dock was not designed for the weight of the concrete, the additional weight. So they forced actually the federal government of Canada to send engineers to strengthen the dock, if you will, for that additional weight. And I was also honored to be one of those engineers who had to go to make sure that the dock is strong enough. But during the 3-day period, I was really admiring the spirit of the people who did not care about whether the dock was designed to carry the additional weight. They somehow forced the issue that the federal government did not remove the processing machine, did not remove the concrete, but it actually forced the government to have us engineers go and make sure that it now can function with the additional weight. I came from Egypt, and Egypt has been colonized. In fact, it is colonized until today, because when the US gives aid to Egypt, it expects something in return. It's not really an aid, it's a bribe to control the military of Egypt and make sure that it does what it wants. And I want to say this to the Duwamish tribe. You will be the one to bring yourselves back. You don't need recognition from a government. You are here, and it's called Seattle. And you don't need recognition from anybody, because you are part of humanity, and we all have to get ourselves actually the recognition that we need, not to wait to have recognition from somebody else. I'm honored again to be here, and thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cecile didn't know I was going to pull this, but you know, this is a wonderful Longhouse, and it takes a lot of money to do it, and it's a free event. But if you feel so moved to make a small donation, the little log cabin is what you do. And I, for one, am going to pay some rent to the Duwamish.